By the way, Santa Catarina and Bormio will be the venues for this year's World Championships, and we'll be with the dashing women downhillers again in 3 weeks' time at Bad Kleinkirchheim in Austria. That's the next leg, by the way, in the World Cup. Now, after the break, we reflect on the exploits of the most prolific marathon runner in the world, Ron Hill. That's in a couple of minutes.
Indigestion? Great tasting spearmint Rennie is so effective that in the time it takes to say,
oh, lunch on the run again, 65-mile-an-hour drive, what noise, buildings collapsing.
Spearmint Rennie can start working on your indigestion, because surprising as it may seem, Rennie starts working to relieve your indigestion the very moment it reaches your stomach.
Everything's under control now.
Take Spearmint Rennie or Original Rennie. When you need relief, the faster the better.
This Polaroid instant camera actually has a computer inside. It works out the exposure. You don't need a light meter. You don't have to measure distance either. The focusing's done for you. And you don't worry about light. The built-in flash gives you just the right amount. That's it. Just press the button. There you are in 90 seconds. Razor-sharp image and bright, lasting colors. Polaroid. Just press for perfect pictures.
For you, sir.
Oh, le Piat D'Or. Oh, quelle bonne idée, mon garçon.
Les Français adorent le Piat D'Or.
Running for pleasure is something that marathon man Ron Hill, the 1969 European champion, has been doing for years. Indeed, just a couple of weeks ago, he popped over to America and in Baltimore ran his 84th marathon over that classic distance of 26 miles, 385 yards. Ron's ambition? Well, yes, you've guessed it, to run 100 of them. And typical of the man's meticulous organization, he already has a date and venue planned. It'll be in Athens over the same course as his famous 1969 victory, Sunday, October the 13th next year. Alan Parry has been down to see him.
It's early on a damp December morning, and Ron Hill is starting a routine he's followed every day of his life without fail for the past 20 years. For the man who was born to run, it's as natural as cleaning his teeth. But this run is something special. These legs have pounded out an incredible 100,000 miles in 20 years, the equivalent of running around the earth several times. Today he celebrates 20 years of daily training, and as Ron arrives at the offices of his company, Ron Hill Sports, in Hyde in Cheshire, he fulfills another ritual, recording the run in his diaries, which stretch right back to a blank space on December the 20th, 1964. Since then, he hasn't missed a day, despite illnesses, injuries, and the occasional hangover. How has he managed it?
Well, it's been easy because it's become a habit, but there have been some, obviously difficult days when I've had injuries. But a lot of people say, well, if you've run for 20 years, you must have never been injured. But I have, in fact, had, one or two pretty bad ones. And I think one of the worst ones was sort of spraying me back somehow, and I was sleeping on the floor at that time. Somebody said sleep on a hard floor, it'll get it better. And I can remember that day going up to the canal bank and taking 10 minutes to run a mile and actually being in tears with the pain of it. But, I went down to a mile. That was all I could manage, but I did it. And I look at it as a sort of progression. The next day I probably did 2 miles and then 3 miles, and I was getting better, and that was significant to me. And my running, I've said this very often, is a barometer to how my health is. I don't get up and say, do I feel bad? I go out for a run and say, well, how do I feel when I'm running? And sometimes I felt bad, and sometimes, well, most of the times, thank God, I felt great.
The peak of Ron's career came with victory in the European Championships in Athens in 1969.
In fact, for most of the race, I was running for a bronze medal, and then with 6 miles to go, I was running for a silver medal. I was in second place, and I thought, well, that's it, great. I'm going to win a medal at last. It's fantastic. I couldn't see the leader. Gaston Roelants, the Belgian, was out of sight, literally out of sight down the road. But I got closer and closer, and then with 1 kilometre to go, just over half a mile, I caught him, and then just in a flash I got right behind him. I thought, this guy's dead. And I went past him, and I can't describe the feeling coming up the track. I mean, in fact, I started jumping up in the air 10 yards before the tape because I was so amazed that I was going to win a gold medal. And, well, I'll never relive a feeling like that again. It was absolutely marvellous.
In 1970, just before taking gold in the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh, Ron took on the famous Boston Marathon.
Took the lead at sort of 6 or 7 miles and kept it, and just knocked 3 minutes off the record, basically. It was, you know, I didn't know what time I was running until I crossed the line, and I was coming down that road in front of the Prudential building, and nobody was inside. Again, I was looking over my shoulder just because I thought somebody might be catching me. I didn't think anybody could be running as slow as I was running, but I was winning the famous Boston Marathon. I've been going since 1897.
The biggest disappointment of Ron's career was his failure to win a medal in the Munich Olympics in 1972.
That particular year of 72, I dedicated to winning a gold medal, and everything, family, sort of, you know, took second place to winning that medal. So my family contributed as well. We got on the starting line, and half a mile later I thought, this isn't going to be my day. Halfway through the race I was running in about 13th position, and, you know, I could well have dropped out, but that's not my style. You know, I was thinking, oh, all that training down the tubes, but everybody's watching me on TV, thinking I'm going to win a medal, and I'm going to get nothing. The sort of despair that was in my heart after that, I can't really describe. It took me about 9 months to get over it, basically. I'm a runner. It's brought me a lot of health, and it's brought me a lot of travel, and I've met a lot of people and made friends. And, you know, even sort of my autobiography has been a marathon. It's in 2 parts. It's 800 pages. But as I say on the final cover, there is no end. I will never cease running and competing, and that's the truth.
How many miles is it now?
Well, as of that 2 miles this morning, it's 106,581 miles. I reckon 200,000 will come up in the year 2011. And at 46 years old, I think I've still got another good 60 years running in me.
Well, that would make Ron 106. And I read the other day that there are 10 times the number of centenarians in this country than there were 30 years ago, 2,000. So in 60 years' time, Ron will be joining a distinguished group of quite a considerable size, wouldn't he? By the way, Alan Parry reporting there, and he has just joined ITV and will be our voice of athletics. And indeed, the next athletics on ITV will be the American Indoor Grand Prix starting in mid-January. Well, looking ahead today, we have the artistry of Torvill and Dean, who, with our other international stars, compete for world professional titles. That begins at 1:30. There's a real innovation at 2:35, which features big names from sport and entertainment, taxing their talents in various sporting activities. It's Celebrity Sixes, and it's a lot of fun. And we have a full bill of professional wrestling too. We also feature 3 races from today's meeting at Lingfield, and these are the selections most favoured by the Fleet Street experts. In the 120, they go for number 5, Whole Shebang. In the 150, number 4, Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor going for a 5-timer because he's won his last 4 races. And finally, in the 220, their selection is number 7, Round the Twist. Don't forget the Saint and Greavesy. Their appearance follows the news, which comes after this.
Round and yellow, warm and mellow, Warninks. Make it bitter, make it sharp, Warninks. You want to drink it tall, make it dry, nice and light. Take your Warninks how you like. Taste the round, it will astound. And for cough from Warninks.
Mix it with Warninks.
Duracell is no ordinary battery. In this continuous test, Duracell lasts 6 times longer than ordinary zinc carbon batteries. Duracell. No ordinary battery looks like it or lasts like it.
flannel suits any man. Grey Flannel Aftershave by Geoffrey Beene.
Super waves and curls are yours, the independent way. Braun Independent. Beautiful hair, anytime, anywhere.
Match Ian Ferguson with Rangers, Dave McCreary with Newcastle United, Gary Bailey with Manchester United, and you're a winner in the Esso football match. Go for goal where you see this sign.
Croft Original Pale Cream Sherry.
Cher nectar, Jeeves.
One instinctively knows when something is right.
We'll continue with our sporting action in about 6 minutes after the news, brought to you now by Martyn Lewis.
Mrs. Thatcher has arrived in Washington for her Star Wars arms talks with President Reagan. They're meeting at Camp David later today. The Americans want to know if the visit here by Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Politburo has changed the Prime Minister's thinking on the best approach to the new arms control talks between the two superpowers. Mr. Gorbachev had insisted the United States must drop its Star Wars program of weapons in space for the talks to succeed.
It was an inauspicious start to Mrs. Thatcher's visit. Thick fog at Andrews Air Force Base. Her VC-10 was heard trying a landing, but aborted at the last moment, diverting 50 miles to another airfield, leaving a vast motorcade empty on the tarmac. After 21 hours in flight from Hong Kong, she had to wait a further hour while the motorcade covered the ground to fetch her. Earlier, President Reagan hadn't fared much better, rain scuppering his helicopter flight, forcing him to go by road to Camp David, where he'll see Mrs. Thatcher. Americans are less than happy with her hostile attitudes on Star Wars, but Mr. Reagan thinks he'll win her and the other doubting Europeans round.
I'll get them to understand what it is, too.
Finally, toward midnight last night, Mrs. Thatcher neared the British Embassy. Those in the know here believe the gloomy start to her brief sojourn here mirrors the atmosphere in which she's now to see the President. Reagan's people have been startled by the way Britain was bowled over by the Gorbachevs, and none too happy with the Star Wars criticisms that followed. John Snow, ITN, Washington.
Mr. Gorbachev was back in Moscow today with other Soviet leaders for the official lying in state of the Soviet Defense Minister, Marshal Dmitry Ustinov, who died on Thursday. He was in office for 8 years, and there's no clear successor to him. The Soviet President, Konstantin Chernenko, himself looked ill and weak as he led the Politburo into the Hall of Columns. The Soviet Foreign Minister, Mr. Gromyko, and the American Secretary of State, Mr. George Shultz, are due to meet on January the 7th to resume the dialogue on arms broken off 13 months ago. 6 armed men wearing rubber party masks have stolen a quantity of industrial diamonds from Heathrow Airport. The men burst into the Aer Lingus warehouse early this morning, threatened the staff and demanded keys to the strong room. They grabbed diamonds and watches thought to be worth around £35,000 before escaping. Police say one of the warehouse staff was injured in the raid, but is not seriously hurt. 41 people, most of them minors, are appearing in court in Pontefract after disturbances outside a drinking club at Castleford yesterday. Police were called to the club after a fight broke out, and they found